It's a bunch of crazy stories written by the Brothers Grimm. And now you're gonna learn all about them, listening to the Brothers Grimm.
Students and scholars, friends and relations, welcome to the Brothers Grimm podcast, where we chit-chat about the stories which were written down by the Brothers Grimm. My name is Phil.
And my name is Mike.
And today we're going to be talking about a very special episode. Grimm Story 15, Hansel and Gretel, one of the big stars of Grimm's world, I think. However, Michael. We have a little housekeeping.
Oh, boy.
Whether or not the house itself is made out of gingerbread is another matter. But now that the podcast is out in the world, I've heard back from some people, from our dozens of fans.
Oh, boy.
I'll sum. We have a lot to get through today, so I'll just sum up something that has come up, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I don't know what you've heard, but two things, I guess. One, I tend to get into somewhat drunken ADHD tangents, which would be fine, but we usually don't loop it back to the actual story, so we should try and do that. And if I'm going off on a tangent, or if you are going off on a tangent, although you don't do that as often as I do, we should try and say, and this connects to the story how, and see if we can actually connect it or what have you. I think when I was listening to Ragamuffins, we then went and talked about, was it Martin Sheen and Emilio Estevez?
Yes.
And managed to not say once, quote, so Emilio Estevez is a bit of a ragamuffin.
Oh, that's good.
With the life that he's living. And I it was right there. So we should try and do that.
I was playing that one back in the car with my kids, and they were like, are you going to talk about the story? And I'm like, we already talked about the story.
Second, you and I, and to put it bluntly, when we were in our late teens, early 20s, we were dirt bags. I think
that is. I think that's
a
fair assessment. Yeah.
Regardless of any, we've been referencing our past without explaining any context sometimes, and then I sort of edit things out. So there's some in jokes that you and I have had, but we don't explain it to the listeners. So from now on, when we do that, I think we can have a quick segment called
Tales of Teenage Dirtbaggery,
where we explain the whole story. And I think in particular, I had people ask me about what we were talking about with Ass Face Shithead. So,
oh boy,
if I may, I can tell you my recollection of what happened here, and you can, because it's kind of more what happened at Castle Awesome. But if I recall correctly,
oh please, yeah,
okay. As I recall, this was when you and some of our dirtbag clique lived in Boston, and a joke was to sign up friends to magazine subscriptions and catalogs using offensive words as a name. And one of the names was always Ass Face Shithead, though you lot would try and get past the person on the phone who was signing you up for these things by saying you were Asfasi Shiteed. Then
correct.
And then spell it Ass Face Shithead. And then after a few months, the company's computer would filter out the name and you'd stop getting the catalog or whatever. However, on one night, and I think you were particularly drunk, and I believe I was there, you screwed up the name, and you kept saying Asfasi Shitfasi, or Ass Face Shitface. And for whatever reason, the filter never caught it. That name propagated to other lists from other companies. And for the rest of your time, when you lived at this house in Boston, new magazines and catalogs were coming for Ass Face Shitface, and probably still today at that address.
That's the best part, is it's probably still coming in.
Did I get it? Am I correct in remembering all that correctly?
I think that is a reasonably good assessment. I don't remember the ass face shit face part, but it sounds like from the context of the story, I wouldn't necessarily remember that anyway.
I suppose. Anyway, housekeeping done. If it's okay with you, I'm going to then go through the plot of Grimm's story number 15, Hansel and Gretel.
Please do.
Once upon a time, a family of 4 are living in Germany. Dad, a woodcutter. Mom, though maybe stepmom, and we can get into a little bit about that later because it kind of goes back and forth during the story. And Hansel and Gretel. It comes to pass there's a big famine across the land and the whole family is starving. So mom says, let's just bring the kids into the woods, abandon them, call it a day. Dad initially refuses, but the wife pesters him saying, look, it's them or it's all of us going to die. So finally, Dad agrees, says the first line to make me laugh, which was, but I feel very bad for the children all the same. That's nice, I guess.
My first came much later.
As soon as we get to the part in the story, please tell me. But kids overhear the plan. So Hansel does not want to be abandoned in the woods. Goes outside. He fills his pockets with shiny stones. Hansel's plan is to leave the stones every few dozen feet so he can find his way back out of the forest after mom and dad abandon him. Sure enough, mom and dad leave, and by the light of the moon, Hansel can see the stones. Off they pop back home. Dad is delighted. Mom is nonplussed. And life goes on until another famine hits. Same story beats. Mom wants to abandon the kids in the woods. Dad does not want to, but he relents. This time, however, Hansel can't go pick up shiny stones because mom has locked the door. All Hansel has left is a crust of bread. So as he's walking and being walked into the woods to be abandoned, instead of shiny stones, which he can follow back home, he leaves pieces of bread. However, birds eat the bread. Bread gets all ate up by the birds. So now the kids are well and truly abandoned and they are lost. They wander around for 3 days till finally seeing the gingerbread house. Hansel's like, well, let's go eat that house up. And Gretel agrees. As they're eating, a woman comes out and says, oh, you poor souls, starving no doubt, come inside and I promise you no harm will come to you. So in they go. They eat a big meal.
Why would you even say that?
Don't worry, kid. I'm not one of those crazy witches that lives in a magic house in the woods that's going to turn you into ravens or anything like that. So they go in, they eat a big meal. She gives them comfy beds. Kids think they're set for life, but no. Turns out the old woman was lying. She was a witch the whole time.
Oh, shit.
And I know. I feel a lot of people probably know this story, but that's okay. We're going to go through it anyways. We're going to continue on.
It turns out there's a part that I didn't know.
There's a couple parts in that I didn't know after.
Out.
Yeah, that just get tacked onto the end, but that's all right.
I can see why.
Yeah. Her plan as a witch is to just lay in wait for kids to come to her gingerbread house and then kidnap them and then cook them and eat them. Also, apparently witches have very poor eyesight. And they just mention that apropos of nothing.
Yeah, it's kind of foreshadowing.
It is foreshadowing a little bit. For now, kids are asleep. The witch sets in motion her plan. She carries Hansel up into a shed outside, and her plan is to fatten him up so that he'll make for a tasty morsel. Hansel gets to eat food. Gretel is just being fed crab shells, but is also being forced to help out with the daily chores. Finally, after enough time, the witch decides she's hungry enough and that Hansel is fat enough. And even if he's not wicked fat, tomorrow's the day and she's going to eat that boy. She says, Gretel, fetch me some water. And then she lights her walk-in oven. Says, okay, Gretel, you go inside and check the oven. Make sure it's working. Because the witch is also planning to eat Gretel. So she's, I'll cook Gretel too. So Gretel, though, says she doesn't know how to check the oven. The witch is like, you stupid girl, it's easy. Just watch me. And then after I come back out of the oven, you go back into the oven to check. Witch walks into the oven. Gretel closes the door. The witch burns to death. And here is where normally we would leave the story. From any time I've ever read this story, this is they're done. But
they live happily ever after.
Here they go on a little bit. Gretel frees Hansel from the shed. They dick around for a bit in the house and find a jar full of pearls and jewels.
Steal everything.
Yeah, sort of like they load up what they can carry, and now quite wealthy, they set out to try and find somewhere nice to live. They come across a river and see a duck They call the duck over and say a little poem to the duck. And then the duck carries them across the river. And then the duck leaves the story, which is a weird little side quest that takes up like the bulk of an entire page of this 5-page story.
Poetry.
I'd never heard about the duck before, but that's okay. Duck brings them across the river. They keep walking. Eventually, Hansel says, wait, this place is starting to look familiar. Lo and behold, they see their dad's house and seem happy about this. Despite that, they knew that he's the one who abandoned them in the woods to die or be eaten. But that said, off they run. They open the door. They see their dad. The father says, hey, you know what? I felt so bad about the whole child abandonment thing. I'm delighted you came back. By the way, while you were gone for a couple of weeks or whatever, your mom died. So, or stepmom. So, so we don't have to worry about her telling me we're going to abandon you in the woods anymore. Don't worry about that. And the kids are delighted. They empty their pockets with all their treasure. All three of them are now rich, and now they live happily ever after. The end.
So, yeah, that was the first line that made me laugh was the woman, however, was dead. Just very succinct.
It was just, the story's already 5 pages. We can't likely go on for very much longer.
Right. By the way,
fuck it. The stepmom died or whatever, or the mom, whatever she was. It's a little bit confusing because we talk about it being both.
Yeah. If you want to start with that.
I've got some notes for later on. Do you have a moral for this story? I think it's a well enough known story. I've got a couple.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of us against the world. We've talked about trust in your siblings.
Okay, little brother,
the 12 brothers. Yeah, I mean don't trust witches in the woods.
I'm for that. That's similar to one of mine. I have don't trust strangers with candy.
Yeah, but you know me. I'm not good with the morals.
Yeah. I'm well aware. Teenage dirtbaggery.
Well, that's mine.
This one also seems, I feel, maybe patriarchal. It seems the father figure's good, mother figure's bad. And I'm including the witch in that because she's sort of a mother figure. But the father never wanted to abandon the kids. He did. He relented after he was pestered by the mom or the stepmom or whatever. And then they go and they find the witch, and the witch is just like, I won't harm you. I'm just a kindly old woman. Please come inside. And then she immediately sets about her plan to eat them, which is, again, and then finally they get back. All the women have died that were going to do them harm, the kids harm. And the only one left is the father, who's now going to apparently be a good father to these kids that
after
twice
abandoning
abandoned.
his children.
He's twice abandoned in the woods. Sorry, kids. Daddy needs a little of that strange.
I know you're obviously you see the problem with he's not a great guy.
No.
To that point, I don't know if I really read this as patriarchal. I mean, there is a theme there of the women being evil, but okay. I mean, it's not like he was strong-willed, loving.
No,
kind of a douche.
They sort of paint him that way, though. They're trying to. It's weird that they give him the one line, which is the one that I thought was funny. But I feel very bad for the children. Like he's browbeaten by this horrible woman.
Yeah.
No parents are good in Grimm's.
Maybe that's a new goal. So we'll try to find a decent parent. That's a human. Animal parents are generally great.
Wonderful. Even the what was it, the goats? The mama goat
mom, yeah.
Yeah, goat mom was fantastic.
Yeah, she taught them well. She didn't fuck around.
she didn't teach them super
Straight
well. She
up
taught
murdered
them enough.
the wolf.
She taught them as much as one could expect a goat to learn. ATU type 327. The story type is Hansel and Gretel. There are virtually no changes to the story across the different countries that this has appeared in, with a small exception that what the house is made out of, whether or not, as it were, that gingerbread was used. And I can go in a little bit into gingerbread in a little bit, but everything else is kind of based on that. Like Spain has a story where the house is just made out of sugar. The origin in the notes from Wilhelm and Jacob said it was just a general story from the area, but it actually might have been at least this version put together by Dorch and Wild, one of the Wild sisters fame.
Yeah.
With a big asterisk though. The asterisk being components of the story had been around since like the late Middle Ages, if not way earlier. Like using breadcrumbs to mark a path is similar to Theseus using thread to mark out the labyrinth when he was going to kill the Minotaur.
Right.
And things like that. Witches having bad eyesight was another one. That one actually I remembered from like another Greek story. I don't know if that's actually common, the witches with eyesights thing, but I don't know if you remember this. Do you know the story of Medusa?
I do.
So Perseus, right, went to go kill Medusa with the snake hair and turn people into stone. And Perseus went to 3 witches that all shared a single eye and a single tooth. Perseus goes to the witches. He steals their eye and says, I'll give you the eye back because now they're blind if you tell me where Medusa is. So they do. And then he goes and kills Medusa with, I think they might also give him the mirror shield. So then she sees herself. I'm going off a little bit about that, but
that's okay. We've had worse tangents.
Yes, and we're bringing it back. How does this relate to the story? I've got a couple more. I have some notes and I have a movie pitch.
Ooh, I didn't bother with the movie pitch because I figured it's been done before, but I would love to hear yours. But I do have not so many notes as laughable lines.
Okay.
Like the last note I wrote was woodcutter.
Yeah.
I mean, like it literally starts right at the beginning. It was a woodcutter, and he couldn't afford to have children, so he abandoned them in the woods.
So, he couldn't afford to have children, but he could afford to have 2 wives.
So the witch built the gingerbread house to entice children to come, and then she can steal them and eat them.
Sure.
It's as we've learned, it is like dead in the middle of nowhere in the forest. Why not build it on the outside of a village?
Yeah.
Or somewhere closer. I mean, like, how often do children come by here, really?
Everyone would know if you built a candy house. I remember when I was a kid, there was this one house that it was rumored that there was a pervert in it. And he's weird. He doesn't wear a shirt or something like that. I don't know where the rumors started, but there was always that. So I think if the witch was killing and eating kids, although now that I think about it a little bit, maybe that could be a business venture for this witch in Germany in the early 1800s, where there are a lot of poor woodcutters. Put out a note among the townsfolk.
Yeah.
Like, hey, having trouble keeping these kids alive because you poor?
Send them my way.
I'll eat them.
I'll bring them to heaven. Like the Virgin Mary and Our Lady's Child. The middle part might be a little different from Lady Mary, but they'll get there all the same. But yeah, I guess you got a point. This is also 200 years after 150 years after the witch panic and the witch trials in Europe, largely in Germany.
I did not know that there was a witch burning or hunting thing similar to what we had in the United States.
Oh yeah, no, it was big in Europe. I thought it was late 1600s, but I think it was early mid 1600s was sort of witch hysteria in Europe, specifically Germany. There was a lot there, a lot of executions. But this is, so we're writing this down 150 years later, so maybe witches can't set up shop right on the edge of town.
Certainly, Jacob and Wilhelm were, if not scared of witches, witches make a huge part of everything that goes bad. I mean, we're 15 stories in, and more than half of these have a witch in it, right?
Yeah, it's up there with wolves. I have a big question. I don't know if this is in your notes. So after the witch reveals her plan, I think you cut some of this for time, but I think you had mentioned this. After the witch reveals her plan, she locks up Hansel overnight and then is making Gretel cook for him to fatten him up. But Gretel then can only eat crab shells. Where are the crabs coming from in the middle of the woods? Where is she getting fresh crabs?
forest crabs.
Yeah. I think I saw those in EverQuest once.
Google has, let's see, if I type in forest crabs,
I don't know if you want to do this.
there are none.
How about bush crabs?
I assume they have crabs up in the North Sea or the Baltic Sea.
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, at least they would know. I mean, clearly they knew it because they wrote it down. But yeah, it's very strange that
this is supposed to be like the middle of the woods. I
Yeah.
picture, sort of the middle of the Black Forest. Chocolate cake.
Oh, Black Forest cake.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite types of cake. Instead, though, of the dark Black Forest cake, we can talk a little bit about gingerbread.
Ooh.
Gingerbread. By the way, I did a little research on this. I found a website that I absolutely adore, which was made by a woman named Lynn Alver, who was a librarian and a food historian from SUNY Albany, and has this website called foodtimeline.org.
And this sounds awesome.
It's amazing, and it's the most Web 1.0 nonsense. Like someone had just learned. I don't even know if it's HTML. Like what like pre whatever we all had, and it's just called foodtimeline.org, and it's just pages and pages and pages of linked written articles from this one main timeline on the front page of to teach you all about where food comes from, and it's really neat. I suggest everyone give it a look. But she said the gingerbread house treat would have probably been known to Jacob and Wilhelm and Dorchen. However, it probably wasn't until the story came out that the concept exploded with popularity, which I thought was really neat. They were the first ones. Dorchen was the first one to have the idea of a life-size version with a witch inside. Like I said, it's kind of neat that this seems to have been, there was elements of this which may have just been Dorchen-viled.
Now I want gingerbread.
It's good stuff. It was at the time, a specialty bread used for Christmas or Easter or on your name day. Do you have a name day? What if I may, what religion are you? I don't even know. I know we're not really religious, but were you raised as anything?
I was raised Protestant loosely up until like early teens, and then everything kind of petered out.
Yeah,
it's hard to bring early teenagers to church and make them still go.
It's not the most interesting thing I've ever done in my whole life. But so the name day is when you would get a lot of gingerbread in Germany. I know at least with the Catholics, when you get confirmed, you get to pick a new name.
Oh,
I think
right.
my wife's picked Catalina or something like that, or Katora. So she has a weird one. But the brothers seem to really love this story above almost all others. So as the editions went on, they kept adding to it, and it kept getting longer and longer. That's
interesting.
Oh yeah, they were adding shit to it. Like first it was absolutely just the mom. They switched it up to a stepmom, but then things
too
like,
hardcore.
Yeah, things like the duck that they meet, the duck boat.
Yeah,
it takes them across the river. That shit all just got added on later and had been like just a tiny portion of another book, but everyone wanted, apparently people were going nuts about Hansel and Gretel, and so they just kept adding to it. And so even in the kind of shortened, like, oh, we're only going to put three Grimm stories in, like, a smaller book for poor people, it would be Frog Prince, and then Hansel and Gretel was always also included. I have a quick movie pitch.
Please.
Not even a movie. I shouldn't say. This was a tricky one, I thought, because Hansel and Gretel I felt had been done a million times.
And it's typically, I mean, it's fairly clean.
Yeah.
As these stories go.
There's not a ton you can do, but I think I cracked something. So I'm actually pitching this as a spec script, either for Star Trek but really in my head, Firefly, which was the American space western drama television series. For anyone who does not remember this series, which ran for one season 20 years ago.
But was canceled, and there was such an uproar over the cancellation, they actually got funding to make a movie.
Yeah, which no one saw. Which
Oh no, I saw it. I have it on
I
DVD.
saw it too. Yeah, no, I loved it. But like,
I've been trying to make my family watch the show so that we can watch the movie just for that.
And therein lies the same problem that everyone that's a fan of this show has had for the entirety of its run and why it was
Nobody
canceled.
wants to listen to you.
So anyways, the series takes place in the 2500s. They leave Earth and go to a different solar system, which has a ton of planets and moons. And they all terraform all the planets and moons into a Old West style group of planets. So it's a bit hazy on the details, but the crux is that it's kind of like the Wild Wild West. And the crew of the Firefly, which was the name of a ship, is a ragtag bunch of misfits, sort of like the A-Team, running around helping people or doing whatever. So, but in that universe, there was a planet which a science experiment goes bad, and the planet turns into a zombie apocalypse planet. And they're called Reavers, I believe.
Yes.
And they have, but these zombies, they have spaceships. They can come and eat you in space if you're not careful. 2 teenagers are living on one of the moons, which then gets hit with a famine. The Reavers show up, start trying to turn this place into another Reaver zombie world. Dad and Mom are poor, but Mom built her own spaceship. So she puts the kids on the ship, knowing she had the zombie plague, but she could cure herself. She thought maybe she could cure herself before doing any harm to her kids. Anyways.
That always works out.
Yeah.
Zombie stories.
But they send the kids off into a spaceship to get away from the zombie Reavers. And then the story is told in breadcrumbs, which the crew of the Firefly keep picking up different distress signals from the little distress pods that these kids are leaving behind as they try and get towards the main government. And each distress signal talks about a different part of the story. It's going to have a fun little B-plot bottle episode with the crew fighting about there's no reason to follow a bunch of zombies, but but we got to save the kids. And yeah, Mom's going crazier and crazier. Eventually wants to eat the kids due to her zombie disease. And then everything comes together with the daughter and son having to hunt and kill the mom while she's hunting them. Crew of the Firefly come just in time to see the kids put zombie mom onto an escape pod. And then they either just blow it up or launch it into the sun or something like that. So that's my pitch. I think you can probably do a Star Trek on it, but what's nice about Firefly is they already had the zombie world set up.
Yeah.
Which for eating kids, that can sort of work, as opposed to just I'm just a lady that enjoys eating children.
It makes me wonder, have you read or watched The Expanse?
No.
I haven't read it. The first book has been on my list for ages. The books are apparently better than the show, but the show I was very obsessed with. I came to it very late. But it actually reminds me a fair amount of that. It starts out, there's, a ragtag crew of a ship who, by hook or by crook, have found themselves chasing down this missing girl and sort of following her footsteps throughout the solar system.
All right, well then I'll pitch it as an Expanse story too.
Yeah, I highly recommend it if you have extra time to watch 7 seasons of something on Prime.
Sure. Oh, okay, it's on Prime. Then yeah, I can watch it. Back to the story.
Snap back to reality.
Do you have anything further you would like to chit chat about?
So one thing that you skipped over in your description, which is, there's a lot there, is that, and I had forgot about this. And then as I was reading it, I was remembering I had read a version of this, maybe in Usborne books, where Hansel's locked up and the witch is making Gretel cook for him and fatten him up. And every time the witch comes out to see if he's been fattened up yet, she has him hold out a finger and she feels the finger to see how plump it is. But he knows that she has bad eyesight and has to feel. So he sticks a bone out through the door, through the bars of the cage. And she doesn't know the difference. And so that's how she finally gives up after was it 4 days or 4 weeks or whatever?
It doesn't say. They wandered around the woods for 3 days and then they're just at that place for some time, while I assume a couple of weeks while she wants to fatten him up. And you're right. I did gloss over it. And I'll tell you why, is because it didn't matter to the end of the story.
That's true.
Because she just decides, you know what, enough time has passed. I don't care about him being, it doesn't matter how fat or skinny he is. I'm going to eat him tomorrow.
It was 4 weeks, actually. That was called out. The reason I mention is because that's the reason why it's called out that she has poor eye, or witches in general have poor eyesight.
Yeah.
That was sort of there was a hook there that enabled Hansel to lead her on for 4 weeks, getting fatter and fatter.
Yeah. Well, poor Gretel just is only allowed to eat crab shells. not even crab, just, you know. So is that what the witch is eating then? Who's eating all the meat?
Maybe it was going to Hansel.
True. Yeah, maybe he's getting
gingerbread crab cakes.
Gingerbread, a delicious crab stew. All right, so they're not gone very long from their dad. So my kid is only 8 months old right now. So if he went missing for a month, I would have just assumed the worst.
Especially if you abandon him in the woods.
He can barely. I don't think he has the ability to survive in the woods for very long, let alone, well, I guess 4 weeks and 3 days.
Yeah.
So they wander around.
Is he cruising yet?
He's creeping, it's called.
What is creeping? I mean, I know what creeping is for adults.
Creeping is, he's creeping. He doesn't use his legs to skitter around. It's all army style crawls.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
They call that creeping.
Whereas cruising is like standing and walking, but holding on to things as you go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, he's nowhere near that yet. I think he's not that far from it, but
it's all over then.
Oh my God. I think.
One other thing that I thought was interesting is I noticed that the first stage adaptation of Hansel and Gretel was put together by Engelbert Humperdinck, but not the Engelbert Humperdinck that we know, the British singer from the mid 20th century.
Yeah.
This was what was it, 1700s or 1800s? I think it was. Oh no, it must have been 1800s. Yeah. So the Engelbert Humperdinck that we know, that was a stage name. First of all, that was not his. I didn't know that. I
knew that.
If you were going to go up with a stage name, I'm not sure why.
Okay, so that's very funny.
Do you remember the short-lived 90s industrial outfit called Hansel and Gretel? And they had that song. They had one hit. It was Palladian Agenda, which was a banger.
Swear now, as soon as you said the name of that song, I'll go back and listen to it.
It was a big Haven hit at the time. Yeah. Speaking of being a teenage dirtbag.
Yeah.
Hanging around a goth club smoking cloves. But yeah, so I went and looked at that up because I was like, I haven't thought of that in ages. They were American, pretending to be German.
Well, they're trying to suck up all that Rammstein heat. Such a nice guy. So, dude. And the song that you requested and what we shall play out our show with was clearly, what was it? Hansel and Gretel's
Palladian Agenda.
This has been the Brothers Dim.
And some
Story
other stuff.
Number 15, Hansel and Gretel. Sleep tight, and we will see you next time.
See you next time.